Welcome back to PSC Tech Byte and Merry Christmas. Today we will talk about how we can create a team using Microsoft Graph with an application-only access token. In fact, when you want to create a team, you have plenty of options. For example, you can simply teamify an already existing Office 365 group, or you can create a group and then teamify it right after. You can create a team based on a JSON template using Microsoft Graph and a delegated access token. You can create a team using PnP, PowerShell, or PnP provisioning engine, but you can also use the Microsoft Graph with an app-only access token, and you can create a fresh new team providing an owner for that team. In order to do that, you will need to register an application in Azure Active Directory, configure that application for app-only permission for read and write of groups, so group.readwrite.all. You will have to configure your application for application only. So you can either use a client ID and a shared secret or an X509 certificate. And I would advise you to go for the X509 certificate route, because that one is better from a security perspective compared with a client ID and client secret. Then you will have to create your own solution, which could be, for example, a solution leveraging MSAL, so the Microsoft Authentication Library, to get an app-only access token. And with that access token, you can make a request to the Microsoft Graph, targeting the beta endpoint of Graph in order to create a new team. And you will have to provide one and only one team owner while sending your request to create a new team. So let's move to the demo environment and let's see how to do that. This is the API in Microsoft Graph that I'm going to use to create a team with an app-only access token. You can find this documentation if you go to graph.microsoft.com, you choose API reference, you go in the beta section, and you go in teamwork, team, create team. Here, as you can see, we can make a post request targeting the /teams endpoint in Microsoft Graph, beta endpoint, and you can access it with an application-only access token as long as you have the group.readwrite.all permission scope assigned to your application. When you want to make a request with an application-only permission, so this scenario, you will have to provide the owner of the team that will be created through the owners@odata.bind property, which is an array of user IDs. But actually, in order to make the creation of the team to work, you will have to provide just and only one user, which will be the initial owner. Later on, you will be able to add any additional owners or members to the team. In order to use this API, you have to configure an application in Azure Active Directory. So for example, here in my target tenant, I configure this application, and in the client certificate and secret for my application, I configured an X509 certificate for app-only authentication. As well as in the API permission section, I configured the group.readwrite.all permission for the application, so for an application-only access token, as you can see. Now, let me show you how you can leverage this API with an app-only access token in a .NET application. So this is a console application where I'm using MSAL, so I just referenced through the NuGet package manager the package of MSAL. I configured the tenant ID of the target tenant, the client ID, and the certificate template of the certificate that I will use for app-only authentication. I read the certificate from the certificate store of my machine using a utility class provided by PnP. And then I create a confidential client application builder object in order to get access to the access token for consuming my target API. So using the confidential client application builder, I create a new client with my specific client ID, with that specific tenant ID, with that specific certificate for authentication, and I build it. And I will get back an instance of the confidential client application interface. Once I've done that, I can invoke the acquire token for client method. I will provide the permission scope that I'm targeting, which will be the default permission scope configured for my app in Azure Active Directory. And I simply do that synchronously because I'm in a console application right now. Once the request will be completed, I will get back an access token in the token response object that I get as the result of the acquire token for client method. So I can build a JSON request, which will be an in-memory object, which I will serialize in JSON, which will define what is the display name, what is the description, and who is the initial owner of my team. And as you can see, this is the format that I need to use to provide the owner. So the graph endpoint, still in the beta because we are targeting beta, /users, / the unique ID of the user that I want to use, which is myself in this scenario. And then I can simply make a post request to the Microsoft Graph to this endpoint, providing the new team as the content of the request. The request will be an application JSON request, and I will have to provide the access token for my request. And of course, I will get back the created team. So if I go back to the browser and if I open teams.microsoft.com, here in the web-based UI, we can see that I will be able to execute this application with Ctrl F5, for example. And here is my application, which is running with an application-only access token, so I will not have any prompt for user authentication. The application is now completed, and if I go back to Teams, I will be able to see my custom new team with its general channel created, and if I go to the properties of this team, I can see that my user is an owner, is the only owner for this team. As usual, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to seeing you next week, and I simply want to say one more time, Merry Christmas to you and your family. Thank you.